welcome to the newly restored 1933 Suffolk Theater in beautiful downtown Riverhead, New York. And now, help me welcome our sponsors for this evening. A big round of applause for the Riverhead News Review and the Riverhead Local. And for our moderators for the debate this evening, first off we have Denise Civiletti, editor and publisher of the Riverhead Local. Next we have Grant Parpan, executive editor at the Riverhead News Review. And finally, Michael White, editor at the Riverhead News Review.
Welcome everyone, and thank you for coming out tonight to this beautiful venue for an evening of discussion and debate of the very important issues facing the town of Riverhead today.
Tonight's debate will be in two sessions. First up, the Democratic candidates for town supervisor, Ann Cotton DeGrasse and Angela DeVito. In the second session, the Republican candidates for town council will face off.
Ann Cotton DeGrasse. We've prepared questions in advance of tonight's proceedings. Some were submitted in advance by readers, others we collaborated on together. There will be no questions from the floor tonight.
The questions will be posed by Denise, Times Review executive editor Grant Parpan, and myself, Michael White. Some questions will be directed at particular candidates, others will be addressed to all, although in this particular session, all the questions will be addressed to both candidates.
In the supervisor debate, each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer each question and 1 minute each for rebuttal. Each candidate will be given the opportunity for a 3-minute closing statement. We'll go over the rules for the council debate before that session begins, following a very brief intermission.
We ask for the courtesy from the candidates and the audience alike. Please hold your applause till the end and don't interrupt the candidates when they're speaking. Please limit flash photography, and remember, video recording is not permitted. So now let's get to it.
All right, I have the first question. And the first question comes from a reader. This question is from reader Celia Iannelli. We all know our local government is very hard pressed to maintain all citizen services, many of which continue to grow each year. Explain how you would meet the growing service demands without growing the size of the town workforce or increasing the tax burden for residents. And I'll ask you first, Ann.
First of all, thank you very much to the News Review and to Riverhead Local for sponsoring this, and thank you for the Suffolk Theater for having us in this beautiful new venue. If you remember one thing that I say tonight, we must raise revenue. We must raise revenue. We are fighting a deficit in our revenues. We are spending $3.5 million a year on the payment on the dump. We are spending, and by the way, that's 9% of the budget. That's a lot. We're spending $6 million a year on the CPS debt that we owe, while taking in 2.5. So as you can see, we are definitely running a deficit. How would I correct that? It would have to be through the EPCAL property. It needs to be developed. It needs to increase our revenue. We need to look at forming a committee that would look at the choices that we are faced with at EPCAL and have that committee made up of businessmen, environmentalists, and real estate agents. I would also say that we need to work smarter because evidently the current supervisor is not supervising everyone that should be supervised. And we need to do desk audits on everyone and look at how we can cut our staff.
Thank you all for coming this evening, and thank you for this opportunity also to be in this great venue. The question, I believe, was how we would grow services within the town, meet all the service needs without necessarily growing the size of government.
Correct.
And increasing revenue certainly is one way in which you can do that. There are other methods that are available to us that are far more immediate, such as we have used on various occasions throughout our town history temporary workers. We have individuals who can come in and perform functions for the services that we need. That would be very useful. And this has not been problematic in that it does not take away from jobs, full-time jobs for existing town employees in any way, shape, or form. So we should begin utilizing that. And I do believe that when we look at increasing our revenue, one of the things that we have to be mindful of is that as we increase revenue through EPCAL, it's going to be many years before we realize that revenue. What we really need to look at is we have tremendous commercial development from the Wading River Manor Road line to the Laurel Road line here in the town of Riverhead. And we generate for the state as well as the county a tremendous amount of sales tax. We have never gotten back proportionately a fair share of that sales tax. And one of the things we need to act on is getting our fair share of those monies here to continue to support the services that our residents have come to enjoy over the years.
Thank you. Now, we do have built in a minute to rebut if you care to.
Yes. I have a bit of a problem with hiring part-time workers. We have unions within our ranks, and they would probably be a little distressed over the hiring of part-time workers. I think maybe that is kind of stretching it. I don't think that's going to solve the problem. If it did, if it was that simple, we would have done it a long time ago.
The suggestion was not for part-time workers. The suggestion was for temporary workers, and it has worked well in departments such as our recreation department when we need to bring in individuals for a certain period of time. You are not in any way getting into the dilemma of part-time workers who don't enjoy the same benefits and privileges as full-time workers, because to bring in part-time workers would grow your workforce. And that's something that in the next several years we have to be very mindful of trying to contain.
Okay, next question. Just so everyone knows, we're not playing with our phones with timing candidates with our iPhones.
We're not texting.
You're not texting us the answers.
The next question is about the enterprise, concerns the enterprise park at Calverton. I guess, Ms. DeGrasse, if you want to answer this first. The town is in the process of creating a plan to subdivide town land at the enterprise park at Calverton into smaller parcels to sell off for developers. The hope is to attract higher-paying industrial jobs. Is the town on the right track? If not, what's wrong with the plan as you see it, and what would be your vision for EPCAL?
Well, first of all, we've wrestled with this question for 15 years. We've tried some very grandiose ideas that have not worked. And we have to move forward with the 50 subdivisions, whether we are really comfortable with it or not, because that, at this point, is our only option. However, I would like to see EPCAL become the Long Island Silicon Valley. I think it needs to have different forms of businesses, the biotech, the research, the education, the freight, because we have the rail spur there. I think that it needs to be developed along with consultation with some of our partners like Brookhaven Lab and Stony Brook University. I think we need to tap into the state and county and federal grants that are available for this. And I think that we need to, as I said, form a committee that's going to look at, we have to first decide what we want EPCAL to look like. And we still have plenty of room after we do all that to have recreational facilities, because there is certain land that's preserved there.
EPCAL, as you know, is going to be subdivided, and what we have agreed to with the Department of Environmental Conservation is a total of 565 acres, in addition to those 670 that have already been let out for development at EPCAL. The current plan to parse out small pieces within the 565 acres, I think has a flaw that we need to be very, very careful about and mindful of, in that we could have potentially land speculators coming out to buy small parcels of land and buy one here, one over here, one here, one here. And then as business enterprises come out to EPCAL to be there and start up their businesses, they may need the parcel that's immediately adjacent to them, and the price of it will be jacked up. This is what we've seen in downtown Riverhead. We have been held hostage by one particular landowner in the downtown area for decades. And he keeps raising the price of his land each time, making it almost impossible to bring something into the downtown area. We have the ability at this point with the legislation to create this particular, have the town fast-track projects there. And I do think that we need to become, at EPCAL, a venue for the applied sciences from Brookhaven, Cold Spring Harbor, and SUNY Stony Brook. Those research science places, which, for example, Brookhaven has just invested almost $1 billion in expansion of buildings there. They're doing research for application of products to help society, and we need to perhaps look to have EPCAL be the place where those products are developed.
That is exactly why I say that we need to form a redevelopment authority, a committee that is made up of real estate, business, and environmentalists that will look at the sites, the sale of the sites, what we actually want EPCAL to look like. Not just to go out to sell it for the idea of selling it to say that we've made money, but how are we going to put it together as a package?
Ms. Sabino?
Essentially, I think, I'm in sync with Ellen Ann about the fact that we need to have a committee to look at this. We need to put our mark on what we want at EPCAL and not have people come in from all over and tell us what they'd like to have there.
The third question involves transparency in government. Covering school board meetings, I've witnessed the board under the leadership of each of you as board president act on very significant measures with very little or no public discussion. The school board at the meetings that you run generally passively listens to presentation and votes on things. I've also heard from third parties about executive session meetings with the school board that did not meet the legal criteria for executive sessions and should have been open to public discussion. Can you assure me tonight that if you are elected town supervisor, you will not conduct town business as if the open meetings law does not apply to you? And are you willing to sign a pledge to respect and uphold the open meetings and freedom of information laws in the town of Riverhead? Angela?
Yes and yes. Okay, I do believe that in town hall we need to have, not, the word transparency I think is overworked, but it's the fact that the information that people are working on and what is being done needs to be shared in a much more open environment. One of the things that I would see as very necessary as a way of sharing information, not just during board meetings, not just during work sessions, or whenever any of our units and other agencies that are part of town government meet, such as the ARB, the ZBA, the planning board. We need to begin, in order to really do this, we need to provide the environment for them to do it in, which is better space. For example, you've been at planning board when they go into executive session or they have their planning meetings, it's like 5 minutes before the meeting, and there's no room to even sit or talk. I think one of the things that I know I would do is to set up meetings every 2 weeks and invite various organizations in from the public to talk about things that they believe are going to be on our agenda or that we are considering that are pertinent to them, share the information with them, gather information from them. But to answer your questions, yeah, to both of your questions, yes.
To both of your questions, yes. However, I would like to go back and address your outlook on the board. I don't know if everyone is aware, the board gets a packet on Thursday with all the documentation for anything that we are voting on the following Tuesday. And if you have any questions, you're free to ask during that time. But we do not discuss it in executive session. Executive session, if you notice, in the last year or year and a half, we have 8 categories. We check off the categories that we are using in executive session. Transparency with the town, I'm sorry, it hadn't been there. And we need to work on that. And we need to bring things out in the open. By that I mean, if we're considering making a deal, everybody needs to know the parameters and the cost and the downsides of everything that we're doing. We always talk about the upsides. We never talk about the downside. You have a response?
I think actually with talking about the transparency with the school board and their executive sessions, there are 8 general categories that they say that they're going to address. They never come back, as you are supposed to after executive session, and report out on which of the topics you discuss to the degree that you can. And my experience on the school board, business does get conducted in executive session.
Excuse me, Mrs. DeVito. It was not. Okay.
Next question is from a reader, Larry Sims. It's a 2-part question, and I'll direct it first at you, Angela. We've seen some disastrous, well, his words, not mine, but we've seen some disastrous planning board and zoning board of appeals decisions in recent years. The damage is often irreparable. First, what would you change about how appointments to these boards are made in terms of candidate qualifications, selection, and vetting? And the second part of that question, if either board made a significant decision you considered wrong and supported by the facts, what corrective measures would you be willing to take?
I think that the qualifications for members of the Zoning Board of Appeals need to be individuals who have experience in land use and land use planning, as well as development. They need to, and it's not evident, as I'm sure you know, it is required that they attend training on an annual basis. 4 hours mandatory training is required. I'm not quite sure that has happened in each and every year with those board members. I think also with board members on an agency such as the Zoning Board of Appeals, there needs to be term limits. You can't have people who are there for 15, 20, 25 years. It just simply doesn't work for the town of Riverhead. And if you can give me that second question again, what would I do with the second part of his question?
Sure. To repeat the second part, if either board made a significant decision you considered wrong and unsupported by the facts, what corrective measures would you be willing to take?
I would sit down with the board as well as with our town attorney and let them know that this particular action they have taken is egregious and it needs to be withdrawn by them, and of the harm, and demonstrate to them the harm that has been done to the town, and also utilize that aspect of town law that allows us to remove members that we have appointed to the Zoning Board of Appeals for cause.
Would you repeat the question, please?
Yes, not a problem. What would you change about how appointments to the Planning Board and Zoning Board of Appeals are made in terms of candidate qualifications, selection, and vetting? And the second part, if either board made a significant decision you considered wrong and unsupported by the facts, what corrective measures would you be willing to take?
Well, I definitely think that we need to have some criteria for the appointment of these particular boards. It's been outrageous, some of the appointments that have been made, and some of the people that stay on indefinitely. It's almost like a God-given right that once you're on, you stay on. I think that it has to be people that are first in real estate, in business, and to be able to articulate that and hopefully be able to discuss it so that the average person understands it. If they made a decision that I did not think was correct, I would have no qualms at all about calling it up short, saying, I cannot support this. What are we going to do about this? How can we resolve this? I have been an educator and a teacher union president, as you know, and a board president, and I have a lot of ability to bring people around to work as a team, and I think I could bring these boards around to work as a team.
I think one of the things that needs to be acknowledged is that agencies such as the Zoning Board of Appeals, our IDA, as well as our Planning Board, act independently from the town board in terms of being able to easily coerce them into doing or coming around to your will is a difficult job. What we need to do is work cooperatively with them, and I believe by establishing an office of economic development within the town that includes them so that there is greater communication. We need to have interagency, inter-unit communication within all of our boards in town hall. That does not occur at this point. Oftentimes I sit there and think, does the left hand know what the right hand is doing? And at this point, most of them are very reluctant to communicate with each other or see that it's necessary for them in the discharge of their duties to communicate. And I think that's something that needs to be fostered and promoted.
Again, I'm running for town supervisor. Supervisor means that you supervise, that you actually take charge of the different departments and you bring them together to work as a team, that you do not have people going off on their own, making their own decisions, and saying, well, this is the way it's always done. This is our motto in Riverhead. We've always done it this way, so why change it?
Next question, also related to planning. As you know, it's been about 14 years since Riverhead began a comprehensive planning process, and more than a decade since the most recent master plan was adopted. Has that plan grown stale? What portions of it have become outdated or need revision today? Would you favor undertaking a new master plan update? And if so, how do you propose funding its costs? Because we all know those costs can be very, very significant.
I think the master plan does need some tweaking. I don't think that we need to go back and reinvent the wheel. We basically had a plan and we chose to ignore it. So going with the master plan, tweaking the master plan, for example, the development of the Wading River corridor, that needs to be changed. We need to look at zoning changes there. What was the second part of that question then, please?
Would you favor doing a comprehensive update of the master plan?
No,
If so, how would you fund it?
that. I don't think that we need, well, yes, I favor, yes, tweaking it, going back through and revising it, but not starting over from scratch, no.
Having been a part of that process, that painful process of committee meeting after committee meeting to produce the master plan, we did come up with a document that I believe was a great blueprint for this town. But as with all plans that you create, we have to remember they're not static. They are fluid living documents. And we even are required every 2 years by state law to review and update our master plan. It is something, as with our assessments, that we simply have not done in this town. There are ways also in which we can become much more progressive with our zone use district and our land management, and that is to adopt form-based zoning. It is a different aspect. It takes us away from the traditional and the very sort of tenuous things such as acreage, lot size, setbacks, and that, the more conventional way in which we do zone use district regulations. And if we shifted to form-based zoning, it would allow us to, for example, take a community like Wading River, and within our zone use districts that get set up, develop a community there that is appropriate and reflective of what the people who live there want.
I do think we need to listen to the neighborhood coalitions or units, but because what we do in Riverhead is we intimidate them with litigation. We need to bring them into the fold. The master plan was basically a living document in the fact that it could be changed, and but the thing is that in Riverhead, we have got to establish priorities. It would be wonderful to expend money to redo the master plan. But I mean, we have a sewer district that needs to be done in between 58 and downtown. By January, we don't have the money. That's why I said we must bring in revenue.
Updating or redoing the master plan does not have to cost us money. And I'll give you a good example. A group of 4 individuals got together earlier this year and spent 12 Saturdays coming up with a plan for development at EPCAL. And guess what? When they presented their plan, it was almost identical. And these were individuals working on their own time at no cost to the town, but with great talent. Their plan was virtually identical to what we had spent $480,000 on. So we can update this plan and we don't have to spend money.
Okay, this next question is on downtown, and I'll direct it to Ms. DeVito. There's no doubt downtown Riverhead is in the process of being revitalized. Still, it's hard to tell whether all these businesses that are coming to Main Street will be able to thrive in the long run. Many business owners and residents alike have expressed concerns about real problems in the area, such as overcrowding and illegal housing just north of Main Street, and other quality of life issues that can stunt downtown's growth. What can you do as supervisor to address these issues and keep the area moving in a positive direction?
I think the downtown area as supervisor, looking for revitalization and keep it going, and also having people feel comfortable with being in our downtown. I can tell you what I wouldn't do, which is what our current supervisor did, which was to shut down an individual during the work session who was concerned about parts of downtown, to say that there's nothing wrong with our downtown whatsoever. We do have issues in the downtown area, and I think those issues will resolve themselves if we partner with the South Side and the county in a significant across the river revitalization project. We need to work with the town of Southampton. For as long as that side of the river remains blighted, we are going to continue to have the quality of life issues that we have. And let's be honest, you have prostitutes running around downtown in mid-afternoon, you have people dealing drugs, you have people getting assaulted in the downtown area. That's real here. Building up and having this side of the river beautified and bringing in businesses that want to be here is not going to work if we don't address the other side also. Did I get that for a second? The other thing that I think we need to do is we have to realize that businesses in the downtown area, have you ever looked at their tax bills? Proportionately for what they pay in taxes, as opposed to what is paid up on Route 58, even for those businesses that don't, and there are very few of them that have IDA exemptions, okay, they pay huge amounts in property taxes. And doing a startup business, unless you are an established chain, costs a lot of money. You need operational funds, and it is simply crushing. And what we need to do is find a way, whether it be through more CDA monies that directly impacts these individuals, or create some form of tax relief for our downtown area so that people can thrive once they're here.
I do not believe that the bridge going over to the south side is the answer. I think that we have to look at what can we do and what can we afford and what do we need to do first, second, third, fourth. That bridge might be a good idea down the line, but right now it should be low on our priority list. I'm not saying that we cannot work with the south side. We can, but the bridge is not the answer.
I don't think I implied or connoted that the bridge was going to be the answer for downtown. It is development on both sides of our river is what is actually needed, and I believe what would help us here. And yes, we do need to prioritize, and we have. The Business Improvement District has been tremendous in bringing back downtown Riverhead. In 2004, 2005, downtown Riverhead looked like downtown Beirut during its Civil War. And I can say that because I was in downtown Beirut during its Civil War. Okay, these downtown here was just atrocious. And the Business Improvement District, on very, very low budget, but reaching out and setting priorities, has been instrumental in bringing us to where we are today.
I don't know about people paying taxes on Main Street that are so high compared to paying taxes on Route 58. My point is that we have things to do, like the sewer system that applies to Main Street and applies up to 58, and that is a priority. The sewer system on the south side is a necessity before it's developed. We have to look at what we can afford to do and what our priorities are.
Next question is again a reader question. Andrew Benner sent us this question. The Riverhead Industrial Development Agency has recently been the subject of some very negative discussion. What is your opinion about the IDA, and what do you see as its future role in this town's economic development? And I'll ask you first, Anne.
Well, I think I've made my position on the IDA pretty clear with my article in the paper. I've been attending IDA meetings for over a year, and I'm sorry, they've never seen a proposal that they don't love and do backflips over getting in line to give them the tax abatements and the mortgage tax and the sales tax. I'm not opposed to giving tax abatements. That's not the point. I am opposed to giving tax abatements to companies that would come in anyway, whether we give them the abatements or not. And what's happening is they're going to the bank, and the bank is asking them, have you exhausted all of your possibilities for funding? And they say, go see the IDA. And the IDA then listens and says, okay, we'll give the tax abatements. I'm not opposed to tax abatements. I am opposed to tax abatements that are not warranted and that do not bring in jobs.
The IDA as a public benefit corporation definitely has a place in our town, and I believe it does have a future. But like Ellen Ann, I do believe that it needs to establish some rules for its governance, the criteria for which it gives out its abatements. It needs to ask those questions when people do come in and say, our financiers would like to have us exhaust all possible ways of saving monies. They should bring that in and they should have to prove it. And you can, with larger, for example, the Allied building that went up, that is going to be going up, I believe it is on Edwards Avenue. That particular institution, okay, has a net worth of over $500 million, and it is a subsidiary of the largest building supply company in North America. There's no reason to give them an inducement to come here, none whatsoever. So we are in agreement on that, in that we do need to have some rules for this. The thing that I do disagree with is that I do not think the town board should be the body that makes the IDA decisions. As it stands, we're a part-time board. You only have one person who's full-time in it, and their plate is really full. What there needs to be, once again, is communication and inclusion of these agencies in the vision of where you want your town to be and where we want our town to go in the future. That's basically what I would see. Again, it is a public benefit corporation, and its continuance is essential.
I would like to know when my opponent got an epiphany about the IDA. She voted to give the Atlantis and the Hyatt Hotel 10-year abatement. She sat on the IDA. She voted on many of those issues. I was not attending the meetings at that point, but I do remember reading the articles about it. So I don't know why all of a sudden she's decided that we need criteria, because not too much of it applied before.
I'm sure you'd like to respond.
I'm sure, listen, I didn't have an epiphany. If those people that are advising you now shared the information that I shared when I was on that board with them, the things about meeting criteria, putting in job requirements for that would have been there. And with regard to my voting yes on Atlantis, on December 7th of 2009, I voted no. On February 24th of 2010, and I brought the first part of that resolution with me this evening, I voted yes to give Atlantis more time. Their closing date, for whatever reason, had been moved up, and they would not have been able to start their project with the time limits that had been given to them by those who voted yes. So that is how that works there. I did bring back to the school board, on which Ellen Ann sat, on the 8th of December and said, hey guys, guess what? We can get the school district removed from the special taxing districts from the IDA. No one on that school board was interested. No action whatsoever took place. The only thing that ever happened was a big TiVo at the IDA hearing.
I almost have to use the bell. I'm trying not to use the bell.
Okay. No bell. No bell.
Okay, this next question is about downtown again, and again I'll direct it at Mr. Vito. There's a persistent stock of large empty stores right in the area of this very theater. Would you as supervisor ever consider to have the town seize these properties through eminent domain, and if so, under what circumstances?
I think we have waited long enough for the owners of those buildings to try to develop them and also to try to sell them to potential people at reasonable prices. I think it is time for us to do eminent domain, like the city of Hartford did, okay, and take them back and allow them for development in our downtown area, to allow people to come in and have the opportunity to purchase those properties at reasonable prices and bring their business enterprises to our downtown area.
There was a time, and I've lived in Riverhead for almost 50 years, when I would have said eminent domain would be the answer. I'm not sure it is now, again, because we need revenue. And we cannot afford to buy out the owners of those buildings in our current financial condition. I'm not saying that it could not happen in the future, but right now, our debt service is $122 million. Where would we get the money?
Vito, maybe you'd like to answer that.
I think without some action, now Ellen Ann spoke this evening about setting priorities. This is a priority. You know, when we created all of the development on Route 58, a bypass for downtown, and that is why downtown went the way it went, okay? We basically took everything away from the downtown area and put it up on Route 58, okay? At this point, to me, that is a priority. We can no longer be held hostage to an individual whose building's assessment is perhaps $800,000 and wants $4 million for it. That just cannot be the way we just cannot continue on that path.
We couldn't pay $4 million for it if he offered it to us for $4 million. We don't have the money.
Pay $4 million with eminent domain, and if you understand the process.
But you're saying,
Use the bell. Use the bell.
Okay, now we have come to the point where the candidates will make their closing statements. Each candidate will have 3 minutes to make a closing statement. We had a coin toss before we came out here, and Ms. Cotton-DeGrasse won the coin toss, and she chose to go first.
I actually wrote it out because I wanted to make sure that I got it right. 49 years ago, I came to Riverhead to teach at Riverhead High School. I am continually reminded by former students of the impact I had on their lives. I lived and worked in a town in which I own a home and pay taxes. I considered teaching a noble profession, which made a difference in people's lives. And I'm running for Riverhead Town Supervisor for that same reason. I have the skills to change the lives of residents of our town. I have the ability to work with elected officials and turn them into a productive team. This debate tonight has been labeled Riverhead at the Crossroads. The mere title leads one to believe that he or she must make a choice. Do we want to continue with the same two-party system, with smaller parties cross-endorsing, or do we want to break with that tradition and elect a candidate who is outside the system? I have had to do just that in order to run in this primary. I did the work myself, rather than relying on committee members to interact with the taxpayers they purport to represent. I have seen over 600 people personally, and I will continue to walk the election districts until September 10th. I ask for your support to complete what I started to do, be the next supervisor of the town of Riverhead. Thank you.
I'd like to thank all of you for joining us here this evening for this discussion, and I'd like to again thank our media panel for allowing us to come forward and speak with citizens here in Riverhead. Everyone knows, including Ann, that our town government, Ellen Ann, okay, sorry, I know you want to be correct, that Riverhead town government just isn't working. Inside, there's bickering, there's fighting, there's cronyism, it's just exploded. And if you really don't believe that, all you have to do is turn on the government access channel, channel 22, and watch it for a few minutes. What we need is a candidate who can defeat Sean Walter this November, and I am that person. I came to Riverhead some 13 years ago, and from day one, I have been an active member of our community. I have worked with many, many of you, and I have called many of you my friends. I am a committed and proven community leader. My work life, some 46 years, has been dedicated to making communities better and to uplifting the quality of life for literally thousands of people, whether it be our students in the Star Academy, whether it be incarcerated men and women in the Riverhead County Jail, whether it be displaced workers, or whether it be the chronically underemployed. I understand the job of town supervisor, as evidenced by my responses this evening. I will not need to learn it on the job. This is why I am electable and the only one who can actually defeat Sean Walter this November. We are at a crossroads, indeed we are, and we need to make some basic changes. We need to shift from politics as usual and get back and focus on good local government and good governance. We need to make every revenue penny that we can achieve part of our pot. And the best ways we need to do this, we need to pay attention to this, whether it be the sales tax, development of EPCAL, Route 58, or downtown. We need to insist on economic development that truly serves our community and respects our environment and our heritage. We need to reconstruct town government. And one of the things that needs to be done is that we need a town manager. We need to put in place an individual with the skills and qualifications who on a daily basis functions efficiently and effectively on your behalf. We need to respect Riverhead once again. It's more than just a campaign slogan. Most importantly, it really means that for you, the citizens of Riverhead, Town Hall now becomes a place that you would once again like to enter. Once again, you'd like to participate in your local government without fear of someone deriding you, making you feel as if you are unwelcome. We have a common goal, and that is to end dysfunctional government.
That's time, Rachel.
That's it?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you and good night.
We're going to take a brief 10-minute intermission, regroup with the next set of candidates, and we'll be right back out. Thank you, everybody. Great audience. All right, so if you're just joining us, welcome, and thanks for coming out tonight. This second session is for the 3 Republican Town Council candidates to our left here.
They probably need no introduction. Councilman Jody Giglio, Councilman John Dunleavy, and Challenger Anthony Coates. So each candidate will be asked one question directly on him or her specifically. And each will have 2 minutes to respond to that question or to answer the question. And then the other candidates, thank you, will each get 1 minute to respond to that candidate's question or answer. And then if you choose, a 30-second rebuttal is available for the candidate to whom the question was originally posed.
Following those 3 questions, we will ask 3 questions of all 3 candidates. Each will have 2 minutes to answer. Each will then have 1 minute to respond, beginning with the first candidate to answer.
We are going to rotate among the candidates in terms of who goes first, and at the end, as we did before, each candidate will have an opportunity for a 3-minute closing statement. Again, we ask that you please hold your applause till the end, and please do not interrupt the candidates or shout things out.
This first question is for the councilman. Mr. Dunleavy, this is a 2-part question. You're nearing almost 8 years on the town board. What accomplishments during that time are you most proud of? And of your 2 terms, which would you say was the more productive and why?
Well, my 2 terms, the most productive was my second term because this administration wants to move Main Street and revitalize Main Street. We want to subdivide EPCAL and get that moving. The first term, the supervisor really didn't want to do much. We had a big blob of 700 acres in EPCAL, which we couldn't do nothing with. We would have to sell all 700 acres at one time because it wasn't subdivided. And that's the big thing that we had during our first administration, that no one took the horns and said, let's subdivide like this supervisor has done, and the board has joined him on doing with EPCAL. Main Street, nothing was done on Main Street. If you look at this theater, this theater was held back by the previous administration. Actually, the previous administration wanted to take the theater back for the town. When the new administration took over, we said, let's get moving, let's help this theater any way we can to get this theater open and get tax dollars back on the tax roll and start revitalizing Main Street. And that's what we did.
Ms. Giglio?
Yes, I have to agree with John. I campaigned on the fact that we should subdivide the EPCAL property, and we had a unanimous board with the idea of subdividing the property. However, there was one council person that didn't actually vote for the expenditure of going forth and subdividing the property. But we undertook the subdividing of it downtown in the theater. We took back the reverter clause, which enabled them to go out and get funding so that they could rebuild this magnificent theater that has attracted so many and brought back the heritage of Riverhead and really for our people to enjoy. I think that the downtown, in encouraging development and helping developers through the process, and anybody that wants to come to town and meeting with the planning board and meeting with the building department and any problems that they had, they could always reach out to myself and I would tell them and advise them and guide them through the process. I'm a liaison to the planning board. I sit with the planning board every other Tuesday and we help people and guide them in the right direction as to what they have to do in order to seek approvals.
Mr. Coach, 1 minute.
Did you want to ask me how my first term went?
What did you think of Mr. Dunleavy's first?
I think John's a great man. I love his first term. I don't.
The floor is yours if you wish to say anything.
No, I'm running for the town board to bring a new voice. I think that the town, Councilman Dunleavy's first term was well served. He's been around for 8 years. I think the world of him. When I announced my candidacy, I endorsed him. Every town needs a John Dunleavy. John Dunleavy is an excellent public servant. I have problems with the board as a whole, and I have problems with the direction of this town. At the end of the day, we are the highest taxed, poorest, most indebted town in the East End. And I think that you've called this event the Crossroads. It's well to call it the Crossroads, because whether it's what's going on downtown, or the new direction we need to chart at EPCAL, or it's what's happening with sewers that we don't have at EPCAL and that we don't have, that will need new capacity downtown, we have a lot of decisions to make as a town. And I want to be a new voice to do that.
Mr. Coates, the next question is for you.
I get 30 seconds.
Oh, 30 seconds, you're right.
30 seconds.
Yes.
That's it. Okay, I just want to say that we may be the highest taxable town in Suffolk County, but that is because of our landfill. Last administration and 2 administrations before that went to close our landfill, and the state told them they shouldn't reclaim that land. And they said, no, we're going to reclaim the land. And it cost them almost $40 million to reclaim the land, and guess what? They never reclaimed it. There was still a lot of garbage there.
That's it.
So what we did, this administration,
That's time.
okay, we capped it.
Mr. Coates, the next question is for you. We know questions have been raised concerning your business affiliations and employment. I think taxpayers have a right to know, what have you done to earn a living in the past 5 years, and what do you currently do to earn a living?
That was that emanated from a column. I guess the first part about the questions about my past was a column that Grant had written about an employer I had 25 years ago. And I'm proud of the work I did then. And I had a great deal of experience, and I feel I've done many things since then. I have been an independent investment advisor. I know that some of my opponents have raised that question. You can go to finra.com. I'd welcome anybody to go to FINRA and look up my record. I started in politics at a very young age of 16, as Grant wrote about. Been a legislative aide. I've had a great career in the public and private sector. And the last decade, I've been an investment advisor. I hold myself out as a consultant. And I've heard from those who've attacked that record, I've heard beef about some of the people that I've consulted to. So I don't think one can have it both ways. But I'm in the investment business. I've got a long career in both the private and public sector, and I'm very proud of it.
Mr.
2
Dunleavy?
minutes? Okay.
1 minute.
Listen, I think Tony, I've known Tony for a long time. He started in politics when he was 16, and he was on the Republican and Democratic side. There was a lot of controversy about him going to Albany with our supervisor to try and negotiate this deal with EPCAL for subdividing. I think anybody that knows Albany and has worked with these people that are in Albany should go to Albany and help us out. We don't know a lot of these legislators in Albany, and if someone knows about these legislators and can introduce us to them, I would be glad to put him in a car with me or her in a car with me, whoever it is, and say, gee, can you take a ride to Albany with me? I need your help. That's the way this town is going to get. We have to find help. And what happened is, we did find help with
Okay, that's time is up.
who helped us.
Thank you. Ms. Giglio?
I think it's interesting because the supervisor did come to the town board and pitched for the town board to hire Mr. Coates for an $85,000 a year job to be a PR person for the town of Riverhead because he was a Democrat and because he could go up to Albany and he could speak to the Democrats on the Albany side and try and get something accomplished up in Albany. However, it wasn't until we hired George Hopbruckner and George Gabrielson went up with the supervisor that results actually took place and legislation started to happen and get adopted with the help of our town attorney and our staff throughout the town. So I think it's important to note that Mr. Coates the supervisor was pitching to hire him for an $85,000 a year job for the town after we just laid off 13 people. And the controversy was not to hire somebody such as Mr. Coates, but to get a real expert to go up to Albany to make sure that it got done. So I'm proud of that accomplishment, and that we did hire Coates.
Mr. Coates, 30 seconds.
Councilwoman, first of all, it was a $65,000 a year job. Your facts and figures usually don't add up. But I'm very proud of the fact that, you know what, when I didn't get that job, I did it anyway. I went to Albany anyway. And there isn't nary a piece of evidence, there isn't a letter in the file, there isn't nary a piece of evidence that you ever, were you in Albany? Did you lobby?
I believe you should be speaking to the public, not to me.
No, actually, it's a cross rebut, and so I'm speaking to you. You made a charge.
It's
I'm in charge.
30 seconds. Very good.
Okay, thank you. And again, please hold your applause if you can. This next question is for Ms. Giglio. You own and run a business through which you expedite permits for commercial and residential developers throughout East Long Island, and your challenger, Anthony Coates, has called on you to fully disclose your business relationships to the public. Would you consider doing so? This way, if a past or current client is doing business before the town, officials and residents alike could get to weigh in on any potential conflicts.
Absolutely. And you know what? In March of every year, every town board or an elected official is required to file a disclosure statement with the town clerk. And on that disclosure statement lists all of my business affiliations with anybody that's doing business with the town of Riverhead. And I must say that I am proud of the fact that I have recused myself from any vote having to do with anybody that I've ever represented in the town of Riverhead. I am currently not representing business in the town of Riverhead. As a matter of fact, I don't even entertain those clients. I tell them that they have to get somebody else. So I do disclose it every March when the disclosure form comes up, and I have not represented any developer that does business with the town of Riverhead, and I have not had any affiliations with any construction or any homeowner or any developer in the town of Riverhead that is currently has a project pending before the town.
And this will go to Councilwoman, that's just not accurate. Your disclosure statement is a piece of Swiss cheese. It says nothing. You don't disclose who your clients are, and I think it's a tremendous, we all, and you said you don't vote for anything having to do with people you do business with, but the media covered the fact that you actually voted for Mr. Dickhoff, and you consistently vote on Mr. Sinlewski's applications. So clearly you do have conflicts of interest. We don't know what developers you represent over the William Floyd Parkway. A number of the developers that you represent and the engineering firms, I've seen you in Brookhaven Town Hall when you've been with a team of engineers, and hours later, you're the councilwoman of Riverhead with that same team of engineers that you call co-workers in Brookhaven. So I think it's incumbent, and the public needs to know, who do you represent? When are you working for us, and when are you working for yourself?
You also have a minute to weigh in.
I'm just glad that I don't have to get into this conversation. I don't represent anybody but the taxpayers of the town of Riverhead. And that's why I'm here. I'm here for the taxpayers of the town to help them, our kids out, our senior citizens out, and our normal people out that have good working jobs, and the ones that really don't have any jobs, but we have to support them, and I'm here for those people. So I don't have to get into this controversy one way.
You have 30 seconds.
And with all due respect to Councilman Dunleavy, he is a retired police officer from the town. So I am a young working person in the workforce, providing for my family, and don't plan on being in politics forever. So when it comes to
Out there.
what?
Stop.
Oh. When it comes to Mr. Coates' accusations of me meeting with engineers at the town of Brookhaven and then an hour later meeting with in the town of Riverhead, it's simply not true. It's not true. He hasn't explained who the engineers are, what engineers have appeared before the town. It's just another bullying tactic and a character assassination on me.
That's time. This next question, I'm going to direct it at Mr. Dunleavy first, and then Ms. Giglio each for 2 minutes. Just want to make sure I'm getting the rules right, since we're changing the format here.
We're done with the individual questions.
Okay, so each one will have 2 minutes each hand. Okay. And this is another reader question. It's from Larry Sims again, and it's quite long. So if you need me to repeat, I'll repeat.
Like law.
Yeah. On April 2nd, so I'll start with you, Mr. Dunleavy. On April 2nd, we each voted to approve a land clearing permit for the shops at Riverhead, where a Costco is to be built. 2 weeks before the planning board adopting a finding statement on this site. 1, did you understand that you were authorizing the clear cutting of 11 or more acres on which there are presently no plans to build anything? A, if yes, why was this a good idea? And B, if no, why did you vote to issue the permit, and did you personally look at the survey referenced in the application? There's a second part, but we'll go with that first if you want, and then... Okay, second part, did you realize that the site clearing plan approved would A, alter the landscape as severely as it has, and B, mean the town would give up $374,000 in fill and port fees?
When this site plan was started, and this was about 4.5 years ago, I had a discussion with the planning board, and our code says a 30-foot buffer, and the contractors or the builders said they would give us a 50-foot buffer. The problem I had was that I belonged to a recreation committee at our Foxwood. I live in Foxwood. And they picked a fellow resident to represent the residents of Foxwood. He didn't really know what was going on. He didn't ask me any questions. I didn't want to force his hand. He went to every planning board meeting, and really, who should have been to the planning board? The person that owns the property. He's the one that should have went and said, this is my property, this is what I want, instead of sending a resident who really did not know too much about it. But the recreation department did not want to talk to me at that time, because they had this representative going to every planning meeting and represent. First they wanted a expressway wall, then they wanted the berm, and then they wanted the fence. They really didn't know what they wanted. I tried to tell them that, listen, our code says 30, he wants to give us 50. We can keep the trees that are there, and then they can blend in with us. I went over to Glenwood. The owners of Glenwood, when they built the hotel and they're building the shopping center over there, the owner of that property went out there, negotiated with the planning board and contractor, and he did get the 30-foot of trees left, and he got a berm after that. That's what has to happen. Did I vote?
It's 2 minutes.
Clear?
Stop.
Buddy? That's the second part. I did, because they met the codes. If someone meets the code, we vote for it.
All right,
They did not violate our code.
Gotta cut you off. I know it was a long question, but
Go ahead.
do you want me to repeat? I don't know if we have enough time for me to repeat this question.
I think I got most of everything down, but go ahead.
Okay, on April 2nd, you each voted to approve a land clearing permit for the shops at Riverhead where Costco is to be built. 2 weeks before the planning board adopted a finding statement on this site. Did you understand that you were authorizing the clear cutting of 11 or more acres on which there are presently no plans to build anything? If yes, why was this a good idea? If no, why did you vote to issue the permit? And did you personally look at the survey reference in the application? 2, did you realize that the site clearing plan approved would, A, alter the landscape as severely as it has, B, mean the town would give up $374,000 in fill import fees?
Okay. First of all, it's my understanding that the site plan was approved long before we approved the site clearing permit. I know that there was an addendum that came in at a later date, but I'm told by the planning department that the site plan had already been approved when we issued the site clearing permit. When it came to voting for the land clearing, I sit with the Architectural Review Board. There were several plans that were proposed as far as clearing and re-landscaping, and it was a big bone of contention with the Architectural Review Board that felt that the natural buffer should have remained between the residences and the development. The planning board chose to allow them to clear the property so that they could redistribute the soils from one end of the property that was higher near the residences over to other parts to eliminate bringing in soil. So as far as the planning board is concerned and what they decided to do and what they voted for, I think it's clear now that the town board is not happy with the decisions that they made. And I think it's a good thing that is being brought up to the town board members and making sure that people that we pick to represent the town on the planning boards and the zoning boards, that they represent the ideals and the views of the population of the town of Riverhead.
You don't have to repeat that.
Okay, well, that's a relief, thank you.
You know, picture that if you're a resident of Riverhead sitting out here, and I'm reminded of that scene in The Wizard of Oz where the scarecrow, they're asking the direction of the Yellow Brick Road and does one of these. Who's up, who's on first, who do I go to? And, you know, it's always the faceless planning board or the faceless zoning board, or it's a hearing that maybe you can make and maybe you can't. I think that the citizens are bewildered by the amount of boards and the lack of accountability. If I'm on the town board, what I'm going to do is I'm going to communicate to those agencies before the crisis happens. And what I'm going to do is communicate what I feel is the will of the town board, or at least me as a member. And so I think that the citizens are left holding the bag, and at the end of the day, when the trees have already been clear cut, then we have small remediation medication. And so I don't think that the citizens are well served. I think it's too much double talk, too little accountability, too little transparency, and I think that, look, we're a small town, and so let's channel our inner Mayberry to act like a small town, and that's what an activist council person does.
Each get a minute? Yes.
I get 30 seconds.
You get a full minute. Full minute each.
Boy, I'm telling you. What happened is, we can, and I did, speak to each individual member of the planning board. Because of our position as a town board, we cannot go before the planning board and speak publicly for or against something, but we can speak to individual board members at our leisure, at their leisure, and tell them how we feel. The planning board, by code, is the ones who decide what happens to your piece of property. They follow our code. If we have a code that says that there's 30-foot a buffer, there has to be a 30-foot buffer. They can give more, they can't give less. So, but the planning board is the one that decides. The ZBA is our Supreme Court. This is,
That's a minute.
both of these are for the state. Okay?
I have to agree with Councilman Dunleavy. I don't think that it's a town board member's place to push their ideas forward on a planning board or a zoning board. I think that it's our responsibility to make sure that the code protects residences from commercial development, and that's what this board moved forward to do. And that's what, as a member of the Code Revision Committee, anything that's brought to me that's a good idea that protects Riverhead residents, I'm all for that. And we are moving forward with legislation that will provide a buffer and even fill in where there's scarce trees, so that there's a permanent evergreen buffer so that residences are not affected by commercial development that surround them. As far as transparency, I think that this board is fully transparent. I think that there are some questions about transparency of other candidate that is on this stage right now as far as what was put forth in their resume. So as far as being transparent, I am extremely transparent about where I am. I think everybody should be transparent.
That's a minute. There are two ways to use the word transparent. I think, let me address the question. Again, I think that if you're a citizen in this town, all too often you don't feel represented. And I understand and respect the sanctity of each of these boards. But the question is that why is the town board so quick when a bad decision is made to say, well, you know how I felt? And that's what happens in this town. And so I think as an activist town board member, I would let you know how I thought. And I'd make it clear and buttonhole members of each of those boards, whether it's the IDA, the ZBA, the planning board, to let them know how I feel.
For this next question, Councilwoman Giglio, you're going to answer first. It concerns EPCAL. Do you agree with the town's current course on the redevelopment of the former Grumman site? Would you stick with it? Should the town seek to finalize that subdivision and sell off parcels, or should the town take another approach? You have in the past voiced support for the polo plan there. How do you feel about that?
I'm for any project that is going to give relief to the taxpayers of the town of Riverhead. The EPCAL subdivision is the only hope that we have to relieve the tax burden on the taxpayers of the town. I am moving forward with a 50-lot subdivision. If it turns out that those lots are worth $1 million each, and someone comes in with a proposal and they want to give us $50 million for the project for a different idea, as long as we're maximizing the money and the potential for the EPCAL for the relief of the taxpayers, that's what I care about. I'm moving forward with the 50-lot subdivision. It's what I campaigned on, and it's what I plan on sticking with. I think that industrial development and manufacturing jobs are important. Our kids can't afford to stay here on Long Island anymore. They're finding jobs and places to live in other towns where the taxes aren't as high. And I think that it's very important in order to keep our youth here on Long Island.
Mr. Coates?
Well, I think everybody wants to keep our youth here on Long Island. Let me tell you what I've done about EPCAL, and let me tell you what I would do about EPCAL. What I've done about EPCAL is, as Councilman Dunleavy said, I acted as a lobbyist, and I helped to pass landmark legislation. And now we've been given the tools, and it's a question of what the town board's going to do with them. Let me also say that I helped spearhead bringing the environmental community to the table. I'm sorry for the members of the press, but we had a very short, sweet public hearing, and that's because the environmental community was included, and I helped build that coalition. And so those are two things that I would replicate if I remember the town board. The problem with EPCAL is that we're not thinking big enough. EPCAL has been a place where all good ideas have come to die, and it's been a place in land of cliches. I think it's best summed up by every financier, every entrepreneur, and every venture capitalist rides right by Riverhead on their way to the Hamptons. We're not even on their radar screen. So the first thing I think we need to do is we need to get on the radar screen of the financial community. I've been in the investment community. I've worked for most of the major investment banks. I'm very familiar with the real estate investment trust, the investment bankers, and the private equity firms that are going to be necessary to bring this project to make it one of regional significance. The other thing is, let's make money the good old-fashioned way. Let's steal it. You have pharmaceutical companies, you have clean energy companies, you have biotech firms that we should be reaching out. Too often what we do is we think too small. We are an area where it's beautiful to live. We could tap reverse commuting. We have a highly educated and highly skilled workforce. What we need to do is we need to plant our flag and we have to say, we're going after this firm and get them here. Too often what we do is we plant our flag and say, you wouldn't want to come here, would you? So I think those are the things that we need to do. We need to think, and it's that passion for EPCAL that brought me into this race. Because I believe, as was said earlier, unless we have too many problems, we are at a crossroads, unless we bring in new revenue, we are not going to tap our full potential.
Councilman Dunleavy?
Okay, EPCAL, that's my passion. We have to help the taxpayers. We have to bring in a commercial base. That's where it's going to happen. We got the rail spur. We reorganized it. We got it working to help the people there. We have a fence company there that makes the plastic fences. They bring in their stuff by rail. They're taking 1,018 wheels off the highway to help the environment. That's what I'm for, the environment and the taxpayers. Was I against funding the study that we're going through now? I voted no for the funding of it. We had 3 board members that voted for it. If they voted, we're an entire board, I will support that. I did support it. And we're moving forward. Is it going to take another year? No, I think it's going to take another 2 years before everything comes to tuition, and we do. Then we have to find the funds to put the infrastructure in. We'll have a map, but we won't have any roads, we won't have any sewage, we won't have any water. That's the problem. We have to raise taxes or do something to get the infrastructure in there so we can start selling these. Because someone buys a piece of EPCAL, a 50-acre plot for EPCAL for $500,000, and then he says, oh, I got to sink another $1 million into the infrastructure, putting the sewage in, putting the water in, and putting the roads in. We're going to have to find grants. I can't support raising taxes to fund that. We're going to have to start looking for grants to fund the infrastructure to support the map that we get in 2.5 or 3 years from now. So that's my thing with EPCAL.
Ms. Giglio, 1 minute.
Yes. When it comes to the IDA incentives, I think that is, it's very easy for someone to say that I'm going to push my ideas forward with the IDA, with the zoning board, and with the planning board, and with this other board. But, you know, and I agree with Mr. Coates that you need to be preemptive. And it's confusing to me that when an IDA has a hearing and they vote for exemptions for someone, that he comes out with an article in the paper a week later saying, why did they do this? When they have public hearings that are posted in the paper and everybody's welcome to come out and speak about these things and these exemptions that are being proposed. When it comes to EPCAL, it comes to, that is the goose that laid the golden egg. It was given to us for $1 from the Navy almost 20 years ago now. I think that this town board is on the right track. I think this town board is moving the town forward. I think this town board is working for the relief of the taxpayers of this town, and we're working very hard at it. And I think that we're doing a great job.
Mr. Coates, 1 minute.
I think we need to do a great job. I don't think we're doing a great job. I think, again, we need to think bigger. The infrastructure that Councilman Dunleavy has talked about, if an entrepreneur were to go up there and wanted to site their business up there, right now, where do they plug into? We don't have the sewage facilities, we don't have the infrastructure. It's going to take a lot more heavy lifting than this board is used to. Remember, it's 90-day default approvals in a town that's not always known for its planning. So bad ideas can come there if they're not acted upon. I think what it's going to take is a regional approach where we involve the county, we involve the state government, we involve the federal government, and we involve private equity. Those are areas that I have expertise in, and that's what I want to bring to the town board.
just 1 minute each this time.
Okay. Let's go back to my first administration. There was a lot of things that were coming down at EPCAL. And we had one that everybody laughed at. It was the 400-foot ski jump. That was never going to happen. But we negotiated, and I tell you, myself and Phil Cardinelli, our supervisor at the time, negotiated a contract that brought in $7.5 million to this town, and we didn't have to pay the contractor back because he couldn't get the funding after 2.5 years. So the taxpayers, and we're still spending that money. We're helping the taxpayers out by taking $1 million of that money, $1.6 million of that money every year, and putting it towards our general fund. So that money that we negotiated back there, even though everybody laughed about the ski mountain, which was never going to be built, we negotiated a great contract and got $7.5 million for the taxpayers of the town of Riverhead.
That's time.
Do we have a rebuttal?
Nope, it's 2 minutes and then 1 minute each.
Okay, the next question is going to be directed towards, we'll start with Mr. Coates. It's about town board and planning board it's about planning board and zoning board of appeals appointments. These are appointed by town board members, yet we believe all the incumbents at one point or another have openly been critical of several decisions that have been made by the boards, or at least the outcomes, because these decisions have allowed for the just talked about clear cutting of properties along Route 58 and as well as various other concessions to developers. That said, how would you rate the performance of the planning board and ZBA? And if your grades are low, would you consider pushing for a shakeup in the next term of your life?
I think the way I prefer to answer that is to say that you want to, if you're on the town board, you want to make a planning board and a zoning board and all the boards that you appoint reflective of what you feel are your priorities as a town board. Because ultimately, while they're an independent body, they work for you. And they work for the people of the town of Riverhead. So I think that it was pointed out in the previous debate, too often we recycle the same old names. It's sort of like the baseball manager who doesn't work out with the Kansas City Royals, who comes to manage the Yankees. We keep revolving door the same resumes and the same names. And so, hey, as a guy who's trying to break in to a town that I've criticized and said it's been run by the same group of people for 50 years, I'm a big believer in trying to get new people into the process. I think we have to reach out to the business community. I think we need to reach out, in some cases, to the academic community. We have to reach out to a lot further, cast a lot further net than we are right now. And so, as a town board member, what I would want to do is I would want to see diversity on those boards, I want to see professionalism on those boards, and I don't want to see the same old names recycled. I want boards that are reflective of the will of the town board and the will of the people of Riverhead.
Mr. Dunleavy?
Okay. We have to follow a code, and our code says that a planning board member or a ZBA member is appointed for 5 years. Unless he does something outrageous, the state will not remove him. If I get elected, I can't say, well, let's fire the whole ZBA and the planning board, and I'll bring in people I want to bring in. Don't forget, we need 3 votes to do anything on the board. I am just 1/5. Jody is 1/5, and if Tony gets elected, he's just 1/5. We need 3 votes for something to pass. For a person who they put 5 years so we wouldn't influence them. And that's why a 5-year term for both of these positions are in our code and the state code.
Ms. Giglio?
I'm all for term limits. I think it's a great idea. I think that zoning board members, planning board members, even town board members should have term limits. And it's something that I would move forward with right away if I could get support from the town board. As Mr. Dunleavy said, there's 5-year terms. So when it came time to appointing a new zoning board member, I've reached out to every zoning board member before they've been appointed and said, do you know that it is your job to listen to what the taxpayers are saying in this town, both the people that need relief and the people that will be affected by it, and make a decision based on hardship. It is not your job to override the town code or to supersede what the town board has put into place. It is your job to see if it's possible to do what they want to do in another way that doesn't need a variance from the town code. And I've expressed that before they've been elected or appointed to the Zoning Board of Appeals and the Planning Board, and they're expected to uphold the town code when possible, and when it can't be achieved, that's when a variance should be granted. So I'm all for town limits. They all go to education classes once a year. As a matter of fact, I just voted no for all 5 of the planning board members to go to a class where they were going to go outside upstate in New York, I think. It was $150 per person to attend this class. I said no, you can attend it locally. The taxpayers can't afford $150 per person for you to go take the class when they offer it locally and online. Take it online.
Now, you each have 1 minute, and I'll remind you, I don't think it's unfair to ask you to assign a grade to the ZBA and planning board performance, so if you could do that here too.
I think the proof is in the result, and the result is that the town board has continued to recycle the same names, and I don't think, as I said, they've cast a very wide net. And so I think across the board, whether it's our town board members that are coming, that are going to be so important to our future, or whether it's the members of the planning board, the ZBA, the IDA, I think it's incumbent upon us to find the best and most qualified names. And so I'm going to cast that net wide, and I'm going to use my contacts to speak to different people. You know, there's a free world beyond the borders of Riverhead. And we have a lot of very special people that come to this town and reside here. And so I want to go out and find people and names that are eminently qualified. And instead of recycling the same old names, I'll give them both a C, and I'll have them come after class for remedial education.
Mr. Dunleavy.
Well, I go along with Councilwoman Giglio for term limits. I think they should. And I think that every time a position comes open, we should advertise for it and get the public to send in their resumes and pick a proper person through education and knowledge and experience. The problem we have is Tony's not on the town board, is to get 3 votes. That's the problem. And I've worked the town. Listen, I'm trying to get an assisted living in this town for the senior citizens. I can't get 3 votes. I can't. Nobody wants to help the senior citizens in this town. So getting 3 votes is hard. And so, you know, it's all good to come in with all this rhetoric, but let's see what happens when you start talking to the town board members and trying to get 3 votes.
I'm not going to fight you guys on the grades. So.
Okay. Yeah. I would say recently, as far as the zoning board and the planning board and upholding the code, I think that the planning board has upheld the code, and I think that the town board needs to be more strict on what the code is when residential properties abut commercial developments. So we are taking a look at that, and it will be changed and it will be fixed. That's one thing that is good, is when a mistake is realized, immediate actions are taken to correct it, and that's been my focus since I've been on the town board. We do take resumes for the members on the zoning board and the planning board, and we do evaluate them. We do talk about them, and we do feel that we are appointing the best qualified person for that position. When it comes to helping senior citizens, Councilman Dunleavy, I just have to say that we all agreed on the legislation. It was unanimous to adopt the assisted living legislation in the town. However, when it comes to a zone change on a piece of property that's surrounded by farms, and you're talking about a significant density, 189 units, when 12 houses can be built, I think that we need to uphold the master plan.
This is the last question of the evening, and first, Mr. Dunleavy, you're up. The question concerns downtown. Are you satisfied with the progress of downtown revitalization? What specifically would you do to improve the pace of downtown revitalization? And what, in your opinion, do the surrounding residential uses that surround Main Street, what kind of impact do they have on revitalization efforts? And how would you, if you think they're negative, how would you fix that?
I don't think we're going to speed up the pace that we have now. And I have to go with our supervisor and say one store at a time. And that's what's happening. The last 17 years, nothing has been done on Main Street because they brought in these big companies from New York City and they said, okay, give us a plan. They didn't know what Riverhead was. They didn't know what our surrounding area was. If we do one store at a time, you look, we have all local people doing these things, and that's what we need. From the Hyatt all the way to the community gardens, we've picked up about 17 new establishments in the town on Main Street, and I think that's how we're going to go. Is it going to happen tomorrow? No, it's not. It may take another 2 years for us to fill the other stores. But you know something? We're doing it. Don't forget, years ago they used to have Bohats down here. They used to have Hills down here. They had big stores. What we need now is what they did up at West Main Street with the ice shop, with the Papa John's, and the bakery. Make it into smaller stores and accommodate smaller retail establishments. What I would do on the surrounding area, 2nd Street, 3rd Street, all these east area, I would then rezone that, and I go along with Councilwoman Giglio here, and rezone it for office and apartments to bring people down to here, to Riverhead, to Main Street, so they can walk. We need a couple more stores. We need a grocery store down here, and we're working on it. But I'll tell you what, Main Street has picked up better the last 4 years than it had the last 17.
Ms. Giglio, 2 minutes.
Yes, I agree. I think that when I came into office, another thing that I had campaigned on is I saw a lot of houses in the downtown area that were abandoned or just weren't being used or were overcrowded houses, illegal rentals. So I put forth legislation that would change that zoning on that property because our current zoning said that if you were going to have an office on the 1st floor, you had to live on the 2nd floor. And with the courts opening and not everybody wanting to live in downtown Riverhead at the time, I thought it was a good move and I feel like it has helped. I feel like people are buying houses for investment houses, they're having their offices on the 1st floor, they're able to rent apartments on the 2nd floor, and people are running back and forth from the courts. A lot of lawyers that do business in the town of Riverhead at the courts are now buying up these and taking up law offices here so they don't have to leave their offices in Mineola or Garden City to come to downtown Riverhead. So I have adopted or put forth legislation that has been approved that has helped significantly with the residential housing in downtown. As far as helping store owners and sustaining what we have is a big important part because we've got a lot of great businesses downtown. We have to sustain it. And when the threat of the Red Collection leaving downtown Riverhead occurred, I immediately got on the phone with the owner of the Red Collection, and then I got on the phone with the owner who was leasing the store to the Red Collection and said, why are you raising the rents 25%? You have an investment in downtown Riverhead. You are a property owner in downtown Riverhead. The Red Collection has helped downtown significantly, and it would be a store that we would hate to lose. Can you please sit down with them? I didn't get involved in the transaction. I didn't get involved in the contract. I just put a business owner and a landowner together where they reached a compromise and the Red Collection stayed in downtown Riverhead. And that's my job as a town board member, is to make sure that we sustain the good things that we have. We do away with the blight. We create a safe environment for people to walk around downtown, which is a big part to downtown revitalization. And I think that this board has done a great job with that.
Mr. Coates, 2 minutes.
As a downtown resident, let me say that I see and feel firsthand that downtown is getting better. I chose to come downtown for that reason. I think that there's a number of things we need to do with downtown. It's a hodgepodge of a number of different solutions. One of them is that we do need to have residents downtown, because when residents live downtown, they have some sort of feel of ownership, whether they own a unit or they rent. They feel some sort of ownership of the community. And then it isn't so crazy to build the coffee house that we're all talking about, or it isn't so crazy to build the small grocery store, or someone who has money coming out of a retirement account will use that to build a business downtown. So I think you start with residents, and that gives the foot traffic that makes these ideas and entrepreneurship possible. The next thing you do is you clear the way for them to to cut through the red tape and be able to open as quickly as they can. Councilman Dunleavy is absolutely right, is that what you want to do is you want to subdivide the stores downtown to make it more reasonable for people to imagine to build a business, because there are very few 5,000 square foot businesses coming here anymore. One of the things I would do is I would make Shelley Gordon's life a living hell. Is that Bob Castaldi put his money where his mouth is, Diane Castaldi put her money where her mouth is, and look at this great venue they've given us to be here tonight. Across the street, you have Shelley Gordon, who hasn't put a dime into his businesses. So I would make his life a living hell. And I don't, I think he knows that the ability for us to eminent domain his property is limited. He knows the economy, and he knows that it wouldn't be a smart move for us. And so I don't think he's being a good neighbor. And so I would utilize the town board's power of code enforcement to enforce what isn't going on over there. But on a positive note, let me say that I think that the town is turning around. I think the supervisor's store-by-store approach, which I've helped spearhead. I served on the bid board here. We brought life to downtown. The bid board brought things as simple as a cardboard boat race here and fireworks. And so we made downtown a place that people would be comfortable to come.
You know, you each have 1 minute to respond. Same question. Beginning.
We're going to go to the left, right? Of the person that just
Okay.
spoke last?
I will respond. We have to revitalize, and we look at this theater. If you came in here, what the work that went into this theater, and he's a local person. That's what we need. But I'll tell you what happened 5 years ago. I said, let's clean up Main Street. Let's send letters to the store owners that are closed that they have to clean the leaves out of their front entrances and clean Main Street up. The leaves were just blowing in there. Well, guess what? Our supervisor said, well, we can't send it to just those. We have to send it to everybody on Main Street. So they sent a letter to everybody on Main Street, even the ones that kept clean stores. And they got excited. They said, why send us a letter? We clean our stores. You have to send letters just to the people who deserve these letters. And tell them, if you don't clean the store up, we're going to come in, we'll clean it up, and then we will put on your taxes
That's 1
and
minute.
have the county pay us.
That's 1 minute. Ms. Giglio?
Yes. It's interesting that Mr. Coates is all for renting apartments and apartments downtown, because he's been a constant critic of the Summerwind project, which will provide affordable apartments in downtown Riverhead. And as a renter himself, paying about the same rents that the residents of Summerwind would pay, I'm glad to see that he's now supporting the project. When it comes to legislation, when it comes to blight in downtown, I have legislation on the table right now that's being discussed in code revision that will force property owners who have vacant stores to maintain the appearance of the frontage of those stores, whether it be through the East End Arts Council, whether it be through any other display that they might put in their windows while the store is vacant, so that it creates a dialogue when people are walking by, and it's not just a long walk to the next nearest store. It creates a conversation piece. So I am working on legislation on that right now when it comes to the blight in downtown. And again, I feel it's important that we retain what we have and make sure that the businesses that we have here feel safe, secure, and that they want to stay in Riverhead and they know more's coming.
Councilwoman, my wanting to see renters downtown has nothing to do with your Summerwind project. Again, I don't know when you work for you and you work for us. At the time that you were not getting the permits on your house over the last 14 years, at the time you were not getting those, you said you were busy. But over the last 4 years, you did get $2.4 million in county money to build a subsidized housing project downtown. You did get IDA fee waivers. You did get sales tax waivers. You got waivers of every fee that the town could give.
Please, no, please.
The point is that you would be well to know that I'm leaving downtown because I'm involved in a relationship with a woman and moving with her, and it's a serious relationship. Let me tell you, one of your tenants is taking my apartment. He's moving into 1,100 square feet and paying $1,100. It's 300 square feet, and it's $1,200 at your unit. So no, I don't support the Summerwind concept as is. I support people moving downtown.
No heckling, please, thank you. All right, so now it comes the time for closing statements. As we agreed before we begin, I'm going to go in alphabetical order. You'll each have 3 minutes, beginning with Mr. Rhodes.
Well, let me say, you've heard us this evening, and according to the 2 council members, all is right in Riverhead. And according to me, maybe not so much. So who's right? Well, that's for you to decide on September 10th. But maybe the answer about how we're doing as a town lies in the shadows of the buildings on the other side of the street, where for 10 years we've talked about security cameras and we haven't been able to put them up. For 10 years we've talked about corralling the dumpsters and we haven't been able to do that. On Route 58 we've discussed ad nauseum about how we plowed down the trees, we put up a parking lot, and we've given tax accommodations to many people who ask. We've been run by the same cast of characters for the last 50 years. And again, their legacy is we're the highest taxed, most indebted, poorest town on the East End. I believe that this town needs a fresh start. And that's what I want to bring to this race and to the town board. I want to see us take every department that we operate and performance audit them in a way that's never done before. No sacred cows, and not just deciding that a department does well because you happen to like the department head. I want to see us do mark-to-market budgeting, which is a tool that exists in every business out there, but not in our town, where with the click of a mouse, a town board member sitting at their desk will be able to tell how a program is progressing against budget, and so that we won't always have cost overruns. Remember, in Calverton, it took us 10 years to erect ball fields, and they cost us a few $1 million, and they don't have lights. And while we're happy to have them, when they ran over budget, we gave an $8,000 raise to the guy who ran the program. So I think we need more accountability in our town board than we're currently getting. I'm all in favor of term limits for the town board, and it's interesting, that issue had such universality here, but in the meantime, no one's ever proposed it, and I'd ask why. I believe that we need to professionalize what we're doing in Town Hall. Again, the issue that drove me into this race is EPCAL. I don't feel that we're thinking big enough at EPCAL. I want to use my business experience and my intergovernmental experience to go to Albany, to the federal government, to the private sector, and to bring in and attract the capital that we need to bring real firms here. I believe that we've talked tonight about the last 4 years, and we're right to, but I'm more interested in Riverhead's future. There's a lot of issues that are about to, you called it the crossroads, there's a lot of issues that are about to affect this town in a big way for the next decade. We're running out of surplus. We have sewage problems at EPCAL that we have to create an infrastructure. We have sewage problems downtown. We have landfill debt. We have CPF issues. And so it's going to take a heck of a lot more professional board than I think we have right now. I believe that we've heard the same old voices. I think it's time for someone new with energy and ideas to move the ball forward. Thank you.
Mr. Dunleavy?
I think in the past 4 years, I'm part of an administration that we've seen real growth on Main Street, from the Hyatt Hotel to the community gardens. Growth you see, not speculation that we're going to have growth. You can see this growth. I negotiated with the former supervisor $7.5 million for this town board to bring in for the taxpayers of this town. This term, I negotiated a cell tower that's brought in over $200,000. What we have to do is bring in money. I negotiated, brought in over $200,000 to the town this past 2 years. I also wrote, people were complaining about our rental law. I wrote the first rental law with our town attorneys, and we've taken people to Supreme Court to try to alleviate the health and safety issues that our rental housing has. I wrote the new taxi cab legislation along with our deputy town attorney, so that can help. So they can't get in a cab and charge you anything they want. They have to have a clean cab. They have to have a clean license. So you know the people that just got out of jail or mental institutions are not driving you to the store. You're going to get there safely, and the drivers drive safely. They must have the proper credentials to drive a taxi cab. People say that they've given back their pay raises to the town. That $1,100 or $1,500, that's a big deal. That's really going to help us. No town employee has never received a pay increase. Everybody gets a pay increase. I helped negotiate with the Civil Service Union or the municipal union. They gave us back mutual. They gave us back 5%. The last, not this contract before that. This contract, I tried to negotiate with the police department to give us back something. And guess what? Nobody would go along with me and let me negotiate with the police department. They had other ideas. I'm for the taxpayer. We have to lower. We have very highly paid police officers. They have to start paying for their health insurance a little bit. Not all of it, but the new employees. We're not going to take anything away from the old employees. We want the new employees. In 2015 was my estimation that they should start paying 15% of their health insurance to help this taxpayers out of the town of Riverhead.
That's time.
Okay, I'd like to start out by saying that Summer Wind was approved before I was ever a candidate or office, and certainly before I was elected into office in this town. And it frightens me to hear that a town board member that may be on this board would turn business away the way other people on this stage have spoken tonight. But we all know politics can be a dirty business, right? It doesn't have to be. This Republican primary should be about what matters to the taxpayers most. It should be talk about taxes, jobs, the economy, public safety, improving roads, and your quality of life. Instead, Tony Coates, who was a Democrat up until a few months ago, is trying to drive the conversation to a place where gossip, bullying, and name-calling becomes your focus. Tony Coates' internet blog mentions me 15 times. He is obsessed with attacking me, my character, and even my family. It's personal with him because 12 months ago I voted against putting him on the town payroll in a patronage position that would have cost taxpayers $85,000 with benefits. The reality is, though he attacks me 15 separate times on his blog, he almost altogether ignores the real issues facing Riverhead taxpayers. While Jody Giglio is mentioned 15 times in his blogs, the word taxes is just mentioned twice. Though he mentions me 15 times, he mentions jobs just once. Though Tony Coates attacks me 15 times in his blog, he fails to mention the economy. His blog also never mentions public safety, resident services, snow plowing, trash removal, or any other core functions of your town government. Conversely, as your councilwoman for the last 3.5 years, I've sought to build coalitions and work with others to create jobs, stabilize taxes, and improve your quality of life. Because I think those are the issues Riverhead families want this town board to talk about. It's not that I've never made a mistake. I've made several. But rest assured, when I wake up in the morning and I go to bed at night, and every minute in between, I'm thinking about the taxpayers of this town and how to help you and myself as a taxpayer, of course. I'm running for re-election because I'm proud of record, and I know I have even more to offer. I'm proud to be just one of 2 board members and the only one on this stage to have rejected an otherwise automatic $1,800 pay raise. I choose to make $1,800 less than my peers. Let me say that again, folks, $1,800 less, and that's because it's an honor and a privilege to serve you. And I know politicians shouldn't be voting themselves raises. Pay raises are wrong while families are still struggling. While other board members were ready to automatically extend the town's existing sanitation contract, I asked the tough questions and led the efforts to negotiate the contract, which saved the town taxpayers $2 million, a real savings of almost $200 per family. The town is better today than it was 3.5 years ago when I took off. That's 3 minutes.
That's 3 minutes. Before we go, we just wanted to say a couple of... Before we go, we just want to say a couple really quick thank yous. And first off, thank you so much to the Suffolk Theater for your beautiful venue and for partnering with us tonight.
And
concentrate on, because the people and taxpayers deserve to know what's going on.
Thank you.
I'd just like to thank everybody for coming out tonight and being such a good audience. We appreciate your attendance here tonight, and
And likewise, thank you to the candidates for giving us and everyone here your time as well.
Thank you.
get out and vote.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stay to meet our candidates and moderators. Our bar is open, our restaurant is cooking, and the theater will remain open for your enjoyment. Once again, a big round of applause for our candidates and our moderators.